Evangelicals greeted the Balfour Declaration with elation. When General Allenby, meeting no resistance, reverently dismounted from his horse to enter Jerusalem, Dr. Cyrus Schofield, author of the Schofield Reference Bible, wrote to a friend,
"Now, for the first time, we have a real prophetic sign."
In May 1918, a former pastor of the American Church in Jerusalem told a huge crowd in Philadelphia,
"We have entered on a prophetic era. We are looking upon the things which Moses and the prophets and Christ himself has foretold."
Nonetheless, Christian Zionism waned in the next decades. In 1941, British Member of Parliament Josiah Wedgwood told a meeting of Zionists in New York that they could no longer look to England.
"I have tried to save for my own countrymen the glory of rebuilding Jerusalem, of doing justice, of creating freedom. It is no use. They won't do it. I can't help. You must turn to America and take on the job yourselves."
It would take another 30 years before American Christian Zionism would reach the level of active, unconditional support offered by Josiah Wedgwood. Two events were responsible for the new wave of fervent, politically potent support for Israel. The first was the Six-Day War of 1967. Israel seemed at the edge of annihilation by its neighbors. It turned the tide in a few days, conquering the biblical heartland of Judea and Samaria. The editor of the evangelical journal Christianity Today wrote
that for the first time in more than 2,000 years, Jerusalem is now completely in the hands of the Jews, gives the student of the Bible a thrill and a renewed faith in the accuracy and validity of the Bible.
2 months prior to the war, in April 1967, a young graduate of the Dallas Theological Seminary named Hal Lindsey preached to a college campus that Israel would soon conquer Jerusalem. Following the Six-Day War, he wrote the late great Planet Earth. It became the biggest-selling non-fiction book of the 1970s and has helped cement Christian bonds with Israel. Lindsey's support continues to this day.
Folks, I encourage you to pray daily for the peace of Jerusalem. Ask God to bless and protect her and keep his people. As desperate as our economic situation is here in the United States, most of us cannot understand what it's like to live under constant mortal threat as the Israelis do.
The second event which sparked increased support for Israel among evangelicals was their return to the public square in 1979 with the founding of the Moral Majority by the Reverend Jerry Falwell. After the Scopes trial of 1925 and the wave of ridicule and criticism which followed, conservative evangelicals largely withdrew from the political arena. Falwell had initially endorsed the stance, saying,
"Preachers are not called to be politicians, but to be soul winners."
But convinced by religious thinker Francis Schaeffer that it was his duty to confront the dominant secular humanist culture, Falwell did an about-face, mobilizing Christians to vote for candidates who would uphold the Judeo-Christian value system. It would be a boon for Israel. In his 1980 political manifesto, Listen America, Falwell wrote,
"I firmly believe God has blessed the Jew. If this nation wants her fields to remain white with grain, her scientific achievements to remain notable, and her freedom to remain intact, America must continue to stand with Israel."
Falwell told ABC television,
"You can't belong to Moral Majority without being a Zionist."
In the 1980s, Falwell would make dozens of trips to Israel, often taking hundreds of people, including fellow ministers, with him. While Falwell disbanded the Moral Majority in 1989, that same year, Pat Robertson founded the Christian Coalition. Israel had been central to Robertson since at least 1973. Shortly after the Yom Kippur War, Robertson flew to Israel. He noted the despondency there, Israel having won at a very high cost. On the last night of his visit, he recalls looking over the old city and making
a solemn vow to the Lord that whatever happens, I personally, and those organizations that I was in charge of, would stand for Israel.